Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here on KTEC 89.5 FM in Klamath Falls. You are listening to The Garden. This is a 1-hour show on Monday nights where I do my very best to pursue the topics of truth and beauty. Tonight, I am very pleased to be joined by a special guest, a lovely lady named Shelley Trumbly, who is the founder, executive director, heart and soul behind Solid Ground Equine, did I say equine right? Assisted Services. Shelley, thank you for taking time out of your week to join me tonight. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. And I just wanted to say again that I love the name, the learning about truth and beauty in the garden.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Okay, so Sir Winston Churchill famously said, "There is something about the outside of a horse that is good for the inside of a man." And that essentially is going to be our topic tonight. This, in my opinion, is also a great proof of God. There seems to be an agreement across the ages, across the centuries, across the sexes and religions that there is just something about a horse. And for a lot of people, for most people, that amounts to the spiritual. And surely that special something, which is almost undefinable, is not the result of meaningless, random evolution with no design or purpose behind it. So when we find something so purposeful that connects nature and man almost magically, we must look behind that purpose to the one who intended it. So my friend Shelley is the perfect person to help me explore this interesting topic and steer our thoughts towards the divine tonight. So Shelley, I'm a city girl, and if someone just walked up to me and said, Equine Assisted Services, and see, I didn't even know if I was pronouncing it right, I would have absolutely no idea what that means. So, to just start off, can you give me a description of what Equine Assisted Services are?
I will do my best. That's actually a good question, and I get asked all the time.
Oh, I'm not the only one.
Nope, all the time, and it's really hard to put in 3 little words what it is, but if I had to, I would say it's connecting humans with horses for healing.
Okay.
And if you allow me to go a little bit further on that quote that you had mentioned, I love that quote. It's absolutely true. I would go maybe even a step further and say the inside of a horse connecting with the inside of a human. Basically, if you look at when you're talking about a divine creation and something that could only be divinely inspired, the horse and the human soul, the heartbeat of a human will sync with a horse's heartbeat from 4 feet away.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, without even having to touch them. So
even a horse they don't know?
Yeah, it's really incredible. And a horse can see 340 degrees without moving its head. So
amazing.
Yeah, and hear a twig break off a branch from 300 feet away. So if you think about all of those amazing things that are just in a horse and that they can connect with you just like that from 4 feet away, their heartbeat syncs with yours. It's fascinating. It
is fascinating. It's more fascinating than I even thought.
Yeah.
So fascinating.
So you think about that connection and that there's just something really powerful about it. They're just immediate. You look in their eye and it's almost like they're speaking right into your heart. So again, if I had to put in words what we do, it would be that, connecting humans with horses for healing.
You embrace that connection that's
Absolutely.
there. That's amazing. And the heartbeat, that's so interesting. That would even go a step further in explaining why we feel that way.
Yeah.
We get there and it's this sudden thing that's happening. You can't explain it.
They're very
amazing.
Calming, and actually a horse's heartbeat is lower than ours. And so if you're very anxious or nervous and your heart is beating fast, once you come in connection with a horse, that's why there's just such a calming feeling, is their heartbeat will sync with yours. And so if you notice that they're getting upset or agitated, or they seem like they're more nervous than they were, you can take some deep breaths and you will see them relax a little bit. So so it goes both ways.
It's a give and take. That's amazing. Wow. So, but your organization, it is a charity, right?
Yes.
It's a not-for-profit. And this is your baby. You are the founder and the creator. So where did you get the vision to start this?
So I have grown up showing horses my entire life and never knew about therapeutic riding. I rode from the time I was, I don't know, they say 2 years old on up to adulthood. Took a period of time where I focused on raising my family, but I never got rid of my horses. And then during that time, I was working as a nurse, and I had met a nursing student that wanted to see if I could leave or pasture her horse for her, and that it had been at a therapeutic center and was being retired. And I started asking more about that because I was fascinated by that.
It's fascinating.
And once I learned about that industry, that there was actually a service where you could use the gift of a horse to help people, something resonated inside of me, and I just knew that if this was what God had for me, that is what I wanted to do. And Solid Ground was birthed through prayer, and I spent a lot of time with my friend Sandra having coffee and just praying that if this is a direction God wanted me to go, that the doors would open. And I can't even explain miracle after miracle, miracle after miracle. But so I feel like it was genuinely birthed from a vision from the Lord that was more than a dream. It was very clear. It was just covered and bathed in prayer on what to do, because I had no idea. I'd never worked in a nonprofit. I'd never been on the board. I didn't know how to.
It's a lot of paperwork. Am I right?
Yeah. And just even knowing where to begin. I feel like all those doors and just the right resources and basically following God's vision. But in my heart, it was, how can I take that gift of a horse that's helped me throughout my life growing up and be a resource to do the same for someone else? And God has just made that dream come true. And just the number of people that it's helped, just he knew. He knew. So that's where it came from.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish that we could go back and hear all those different miracles. I'm sure it's incredible. I loved what you just said, that sentence. This was more than a dream.
Yeah.
This was a vision that God gave you.
Yeah. And
that's incredible.
I feel like a dream, you dream things, or they're almost thoughts in a way. Like you
Agreed.
But this was different, and I've never experienced anything like it. And I feel like it was one of those where you take just one step for that day and trust that God is just going to open the next door, because I genuinely had no clue other than for that day to reach out to the people and the resources that he brought from the property. Like, we looked at different places, and this was exactly where it was supposed to be, and is doing the purpose that it was intended to do, beyond anything I could dream up. So
yeah, even bigger. So, if you had dreamed it, it wouldn't be what it is now. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. So you were working as a nurse. Was it scary then? You eventually took a final leap, and this is your whole life, your whole job in your life, right? Yeah.
So we started out just volunteering, working basically night and day from scratch in the dirt, literally, trying to get something. We didn't have a barn, or you really started from scratch. And I was working, and I actually had 2 nursing jobs, and had 4 boys. And so, I mean, there was a lot in my life. But when something is a passion, you know, people will say if you find something you love, it doesn't feel like work. Well, that's true and not true. It is work, and it feels like work, but there is this drive that makes you just want to see it come to life. And so I guess where it really started was we did apply for some grants, because like I said, it was all volunteer. We had a 100% volunteer crew, but such interest and growth that it really needed someone to be there full time. So I had to really pray about that, because I mean, my career in nursing paid pretty well, and I didn't think that this was going to pay at all. And I wasn't really sure how this was going to look. So God just opened that too. Like, there was a grant, there was a funder that about 3 years in, so I volunteered for the first 3 years and just did it after work and seasonally. And we applied for a grant to fund the director position. And I just had a number in my head that I thought it would need to be if I was going to step away from nursing. And it was still less than I was making, but I felt like that was doable. Well, the figure came back at exactly what I needed.
Oh, my goodness.
Down to the penny. And so I just felt like, okay, I needed to walk in that and trust that everything would be provided. At the same hand, I didn't want to completely give up my nursing because I worked hard for that. So I was able to leave one of my nursing jobs, and then the current job I have is very supplemental.
Oh, so you are still nursing?
I am.
Oh, you're a busy lady. Oh, my goodness.
I do it just enough to keep my license.
Oh, yes, which is important. I can see that. Yeah.
And I love it. And it's just a few hours, and I feel like it complements so well what we're doing because of the medical background and just the knowledge of the disabilities and things like that. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. It's the perfect, that's where I feel like looking back how God used everything in my life, showing horses and nursing school to come together to do for such a time as this, I would say.
And also the fact that you're from Klamath Falls. You are from Klamath Falls, right? Yes. So this is a true daughter of the city of this place. It's amazing. And I think, I don't know, I've lived many different places around the world, and Klamath Falls is, I always say this to people, ask me what it's like, and I always say it's wholesome.
Yeah.
It's just the perfect place for this kind of charity outreach because it's such a wholesome community. You're going to get people who get it and who want to stand by your side.
Yeah.
And it's a horse community too. It's the kind of place where people love their horses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt like the ranch where we have a cattle ranch, small cattle ranch, and what I like about the location is it is on a ranch and it feels like you're out in the country, but it really is only 10 to 12 minutes from town.
It's perfect.
So, the location is convenient for volunteers and students. And I knew that I couldn't be driving, if I had to go feed the horses somewhere else, I would not be able to do that. So that was kind of the purpose behind starting it from scratch instead of a facility. We were offered use of a facility, but it was about 45 minutes out of town. And that's really difficult to make that many trips a day. And so that might be hard for the people that you're reaching as well.
Absolutely. To have to do that extra work you want it to be, needs to be something you can fall into almost, right?
Yes.
When you're struggling with those kind of struggles.
Absolutely. And I did have a mentor from Illinois, and she told me, she goes, don't worry about having the perfect facility or getting the barn or waiting until you have everything. She said, just start where you are with what you have, but never take on more than you can serve well.
Good advice.
So she gave a lot of good advice, and we just followed that. We started with one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Start with one.
You start with
for the one. That's what we always said in our ministry. So, okay, it all sounds super amazing, but there must have been really hard moments along the path as well.
Oh yeah. I can remember lots of what are you thinking, Lord? Conversations, and I have no idea. So again, there's moments of waiting and trusting, and sometimes the waiting seems like you should be doing something, and it does feel like too much sometimes. And it is a nonprofit, but very similar to the business world in that you never know.
Right.
You don't know tomorrow where the resources or the provision will come from, so you just have to keep doing what you know is the right thing to do and trust that it's going to work out.
It's harder than the business world, I think, in that way.
It is really
nonprofit.
Hard. Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of grant writing. We try to do some fundraising. We do have some program revenue, but in all honesty, we would not be able to charge really what the actual costs were. And also we want to reach a population where they just wouldn't be able to afford services. So that's why we do have to look for other ways of offsetting the revenue. Yeah.
I don't think I could do it. Respect. It sounds really difficult.
Honestly, if it was something of my own, I couldn't do it. Right. And I just feel like that's what's hard to explain when something is, you just know that you're supposed to be walking in that. I'm sure there'll be a season where maybe it's no longer my season. I don't know. But for now, I feel like this is just where God has called me, and he's equipped me every day. And it is, I'm not going to lie, it's hard. I mean, I have some real friendships, some close friends that, you know, I have to call on sometimes and just be reminded that to just trust. And
Yeah.
But with anything, it is, you do have to do the work. So it is.
That's
it is
right.
hard.
I thought that was good what you said about how they say a hobby doesn't feel like a work, or a calling doesn't feel like work, but it is still work.
It is still work.
It's kind of naive to think that it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And what I think about that is that you want to get up each day and you look forward to doing it, but it still has those days where I have plenty of days where I feel like I'm sinking in quicksand.
Yeah.
Like it just is too much, but it doesn't stay that way. And I try to be quicker about reminding myself of everything that God has already done.
Right.
And so
yes. He gives you those monuments to look back on when it's tough. So you can say, okay, God, I know you did it. So I can keep going.
And the stories from the families, the stories from the veterans, like they're really powerful. And I get to be a part of that and live that. And that's just the greatest joy. It just brings... It really genuinely, I really feel like I've had a lot of times in my life that were happy, and I love spending time with my kids and all those things, but real joy, genuine joy that's different than that. I think I experienced that for the first time in the last few years.
What a great testimony.
Yeah.
So there you go, people. Find that vision that God has for you. It's going to be hard work.
Yeah.
She said 3 years that she was working 2 jobs and doing this for making no money, doing this for 3 years before she quit. And I mean, there you go. That's what it's hard work, but the joy at the end of that every day
it's very
worth it, right? Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I saw on your webpage, the first thing that I'm going to say it, it's Solid Ground, SOLID, ground, GROUND, KF.org. Write it down, people. solidgroundkf.org. So if you log onto that webpage, the first thing that you're going to see is a scripture. It says, "He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along." That's Psalms 40, verse 2, maybe one of the most famous Psalms. What made you pick that particular psalm?
Well, again, that didn't come from me, but here's the story. I was trying to think of a name for Solid Ground, and I had watched a video that was really inspiring. It's called Horses That Heal. And I, at the very end, one of the little boys, he goes, "It's like a dream." And to me, I felt like it needed to have the word dream in it. So I was just confident that that's what it was going to be called, and I had hundreds of names. I would call my friends, my family, "What do you think of these names?" Or ask them, give me some names. And I did this for months, and nothing but the word solid ground kept coming up, and I thought it was silly, like it didn't match anything. It didn't have dream in it, and I didn't know why that it kept feeling like it was supposed to be that. Like it made no sense to me, and nobody said anything. It was on the list. Nobody picked it or anything.
No one was like, "Oh, I like that one."
And so then I was reading in the Bible one time, or reading my devotional or something, and I ran across that verse, and it just immediately resonated, and just exactly like the vision that God gave for Solid Ground. It was so clear that it was a picture of what we were doing. It's taking somebody that was hurting and broken and felt like they were just buried, and lifting their feet
amazing
on solid ground. And most of the translations say solid rock, but there is one that says solid ground. And I just knew that that's exactly what it was supposed to be. And it has never changed from that truly being what takes place out there.
Wow.
It's incredible.
That's awesome.
And it can range from just, we've had, one in particular veteran that was suicidal for a period of time, but he told me that if he wasn't such a coward, he wouldn't be here, because he didn't feel he had the courage to even kill himself. And then when he started coming out, he said he found a reason to live again with the horses and connecting with them. So to me, like, that just is that picture over and over again. Like, he was at the end of his rope and what felt like too much. And then God just brought him out.
Set his feet upon the rock, on the
Yep.
solid ground.
Yep, absolutely.
Solid ground's almost better than rock because you can't really walk away from a rock.
Yeah, that's good.
But you can keep going on the solid ground, right?
I don't know. I can't explain it. Like when you know that you know, like it's supposed to be ground, not rock. And I don't know why, but that's
what it is. I love it.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that scripture too. Okay. So we've touched on the veterans. You guys do a lot there, but that's the program that seems to be talked about the very most. So tell our listeners, what are you doing with these veterans? What's happening at Solid Grounds?
I think the reason that the veterans get talked about the most is just that it's, as a whole, in the state of Oregon, the suicide rate among veterans is about 43.5%.
Oh, my goodness.
And that is 12% higher than the national average.
Oh, that's so much higher.
Yeah.
That's
and
interesting.
so we also have a really high number of veterans per capita here in just Klamath County.
Okay.
So you combine all of that with the limited resources that we have to serve. So of the mental health, of the people who need or could benefit from mental health services, for every 200, there's one mental health therapist.
Oh, my goodness.
Very much a shortage. And so when you take a veteran, what they tend to do is isolate themselves. And they're adults, so they're not the same as children have families or somebody taking care of them, whereas the veteran could easily isolate and nobody would know if they were okay. So this connection with a horse kind of pulls them out of that shell a little bit. They'll connect with a horse, whereas maybe they're not ready to connect with a person.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so the thing that we do at Solid Ground is really just making that connection, one, with a horse, so they can reestablish some trust and some communication and just that connection, basically that heart connection, but then also connecting them with fellow veterans. And that's really powerful too. And we share a meal. So we have a time to share a meal, and they get to ride horse. The ones that want to and can get to ride. If they don't want to ride, they can groom or just spend time connecting with the horses. We usually bring down or try to bring down the miniature horse too. We have a veteran that loves Angel, and then sometimes our mini donkeys, because we have a couple veterans that love them. So they get to spend time just with fellowship with fellow veterans, as well as this bonding and connecting with horses and almost reintegrating back into society. Step
by step.
Yep.
That's amazing. Now, when you started this, did you have veterans in mind? Did you know that was the direction you would be going?
No, I honestly didn't have any of that in mind.
Right.
Yeah, it was sort of like, everything was one day and one step at a time. And the very first student that we served in 2017, we had one student that whole year, and we weren't going to be open, but there was a doctor in Medford that I think was the physician for this client, and just was insisting that he come. He was 11 years old. He was suicidal. His mom was in prison. His dad had just gotten out of prison, and he'd been in this foster care system, and they did not work, just having a really hard time reaching him. So when they went over all the things he was struggling with, and that he was oppositional defiant disorder, I was like, well, are you sure that we're going to be able to, work with him and he's going to want to come? And they said, oh yeah. This little boy, there was such a change within the 6 weeks that he was able to hug the horse. And, we said the horse loved him, and he's like, loves? I don't know about loves. And he was happy and smiling. And DHS had actually covered his fee or his program, and they said they would pay as long as it took. There was such a change in him. So that was our very first student. It was our very first experience. And so I guess initially I knew it'd be children for sure.
That's probably what I would have thought too.
Yeah.
We'll have kids.
Yeah. I thought it would mostly be children. But then I just really thought about who lives here, what are the, I didn't want to model necessarily what everyone else was doing, because it needed to be relevant to our area. And our area had a high number of veterans and a veteran, facility, and then children. So that was our primary focus. But we also did seniors. We had a program through Pelican Point, and they brought their seniors out. And so we say that our youngest is 3 and our oldest was 98.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Everything in between.
Yep. She celebrated her 98th birthday, and they came out every Friday, and they did that until COVID. Then they weren't able to come back out. But we're hoping to get that going again.
Yes. I can only imagine how good that is for
so amazing.
For the elderly. They get so cooped up, poor things. Wow.
Yeah. When they came out, so the administrator, he had moved from Bend to here, and they were doing this in Bend. So he was really instrumental.
Okay, so he knew, and that's cool. Yeah.
They came out, so in the facility, they would walk around with their walkers, and they just looked like they were barely hanging on. But you bring them out on a bus, and they were putting those walkers aside, and they were going over and grooming horses. And he said it was like they came back to life
I'm
again.
sure. That's amazing.
It was amazing, yeah.
That's so cool. Okay, so how do you find the veterans, or how do the veterans find you?
So we have connected with the Klamath County VA, and so we get referrals through them, and also through the veteran clinic, through word of mouth. But if they want to come, we have a couple of VA coordinators now. So we have a men's division and women's division. So if someone's interested, we usually connect them with either the veterans coordinator, who will help guide them through the VA, and or they can just directly go to the Klamath County veterans and tell them they want to come. And so we work closely with them and get the medical releases and things like that, and then we just have them come on out.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to show your video.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I just think the hardest part for people, especially veterans sometimes, is coming out. They don't want to be that new
That's
person.
what I would imagine, yeah.
Yes. And so we try to get them connected with one of the coordinators so they know somebody. They're welcome to also come out on a different time, just to take a tour and get used to the facility. But it's very welcoming and accommodating. And usually after that first time, they're
good to go.
Yeah,
I think I would be nervous. I mean, I'm not even a vet, but I can imagine feeling like, it's kind of a leap, especially if you haven't been around horses before. Yeah. So that's good that you have all those different ways to connect.
Absolutely.
I also didn't know that you shared a meal together.
Yeah.
That's really lovely.
I think it's one of our most favorite things, because there's something about sharing a meal.
There is.
Yeah.
There really is. It's true. Okay, so I'm going to play the audio of a video. I shouldn't say show a video. You can find it on the Solid Grounds website, which is, again, solidgroundkf.org, and it's under the Veterans Program link. So if you want to watch it and actually see the lovely faces, please do. But I'm just going to play the audio because I don't think you need to see them to get the gist. So, as I always tell you, I'm not the most technically savvy. So let's just see if we can get this to work. Here we go.
I am
there we go.
Veteran, post 9/11, and I got out in the end of 2004. So I was in the first part of the engagements. I went through several mental health facilities that the VA had available, and went through a lot of different medications, and I found that nothing was really helping me.
You can see the physical suffering, but it's hard for society to see our mental illnesses from war. I had a situation, I received 100% service connected for PTSD, and then head injury, paralyzed for 1.5 years in the Minneapolis VA.
From the very beginning, it was just a vision that God clearly laid out to me, and the words solid ground were from the verse in Psalms 40. He lifted me out of the mud and mire and set my feet on solid ground. And that was a perfect picture of what we do here, just taking someone struggling and broken and giving them an opportunity. So that means they can come out and they can ride, or they can come out and just groom and build bonds of love and trust with the horses. And we're just there to facilitate the horse being the teacher.
If you truly want to try something that'll get you involved with other vets and with farm animals, horses in particular, this is the program. No doubt about it.
To me, the animals in life, that's what soothes me. And people don't maybe understand the soothe and the love of an animal. To me, they're peaceful and they're showing love back. So it's easy to love and be with them.
I mean, I don't believe you have to be disabled to come to this. I just believe that it'll help you out in the long run, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if you're a spiritual person. I can't express what this will do for us vets. I mean, so far we've had camaraderie, we've learned about each other. It's got civilians involved with it. I just can't fathom that, really.
Giving me something to look forward every week is very uplifting.
I'm coming out of it with the horses the last 2 months. I've came out to be able to hold my wife's hand. I'm picking my shirts to match my t-shirts. This year's the first time I ever went to a restaurant and picked my own meal.
I've gotten more out and about because of what goes on out here. I feel more confident.
It really helps my depression, with my post-traumatic stress disorder as well as my traumatic brain injury. Then I find that the more I come back, the more I feel a connection with the horses.
It's not about us, really. It's just about being able to be here and spend time and share the horses and to bring such joy to their heart and their family.
I think they're very unique people. I think they have a vision, and I think that they're working very hard and making a lot of sacrifices to see that vision come true. They're not trying to promote themselves more so than they are trying to help people. And that, I really admire that. And I think that is what's going to be the biggest impact on people's lives, is that sincere desire to reach out. And I believe that they have a good heart. They're doing this whole thing, through the heart. And that speaks volumes, and especially to a veteran, because a veteran can spot a phony a mile away.
I love the part when he says about the civilians being involved. I think that is really a blessing.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of the veterans. Yeah, they go to the VA. A lot of the outreach they get is from other military people. So it really is a beautiful thing to have civilians doing this.
Yeah, it's a beautiful transition. And the one veteran that was speaking on there where he said he came out to hold his wife's hand, a further story on that. He had not been able to do that in 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most touching when he says he's picking out his t-shirts and he ordered a meal at a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was really hard for him to go out anywhere or to he can't ride the bus. He couldn't ride the bus because too much anxiety, too much PTSD. But now, after he's been in our program now 3 years, he can ride the bus all by himself. The bus brings him out to the program, whereas before it could only be his wife. So huge. Yeah.
And when you're a civilian, you sometimes don't realize how badly impacted these veterans are and what they're going through. I mean, that's worse than the things I imagine, I mean, that's, not being able to hold his wife's hand is just, that's awful.
The effects of the military trauma that we don't necessarily always understand.
We can't understand,
and how those little day-to-day things that we take for granted are really hard for them to do. And he couldn't pet his dog. It was that touch, that physical touch he wasn't able to. So just incredible for him, his wife, his family.
Yeah, well, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see. So you also do, on your webpage, I read that you also you can help people with stress, anxiety, depression, ADHD, addiction, and so on. I'm sure there's even more things than that. So have you seen amazing changes in other people as well? Well, you mentioned the little boy.
Yeah, there's so many stories. I mean, I could go on and on, but a couple really powerful ones. There's a little boy, he started coming when he was 4, and we didn't really fully know that he was not verbal at all. We thought just not with us.
Sure.
But he started coming out, and at first it was just all we could do to really kind of keep us focused, bringing it back to the horse and keeping him focused. And then when we were riding around, he waved and said, "Hi, Mom." And we didn't think anything of it, finished the session, and she was in tears. And it was the first words he'd ever spoken.
Oh, my goodness.
And so she got to hear that "Hi, Mom" for the first time. And from that point, he has grown to be a little boy that had a difficulty paying attention enough to get through a lesson, to coming to our summer day camps that are group camps, and he's a leader. He's the line leader. Like, you would absolutely never know that he ever struggled with that. So,
and what are you doing? He's literally just from coming and spending time with the horses?
Yeah. See, isn't that, it's not like
it's hard to even wrap my brain around it. I'm imagining this, you have this program set up.
Yeah. Well, the magic happens just, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different reasons. One, from a physical standpoint. So we have a client that has MS, and she grew up riding. And so the progression of MS has basically, she's now in a wheelchair. She last year even could still stand and get on the horse, but the movement of the horse mimics the human gait. So for someone in a wheelchair, if you can get them on the back of the horse and do the walking, sometimes a slow jog, whatever they can tolerate, that movement is just like they were walking. So they get the same physical benefits. So for this person, she was in physical therapy. She'd reached a plateau. They were not making any progress. And they got her on the horse, and her core strength improved 40%.
Oh my.
So it's huge for something physical. And then from like fantastic children on the autism spectrum or adults. It's hard to really explain why everything works, but the program really consists of doing things on horseback, doing things on the ground, making decisions on whether it's better for a riding program or a ground program. But it just happens. Like, it's I mean,
amazing.
It's so, that's what's so amazing about the program. Like, it's not like we're going, oh, okay, you know. Now, there are some pieces where we do have PATH certified instructors, and they do take the student goals and work on programs to help them reach their goals. So that is true. But as far as the actual therapeutic outcomes and benefits, that's all taking place simply because of that connection with the horse or being on horseback.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And I've heard this before about autistic children being able to connect with horses. Is there a theory? Why do they think that is? Or...
There probably is, and I don't know
okay.
that. Yeah, I should probably know it, but it's so incredible because there was a couple. Again, I have story after story, but there's one little boy. He came just recently, and his mom, I don't think that we were even sure if he'd ride. So she started him out just in our ground connection class to see, would he even like this? You know, how's this going to work? And he came, and the whole first day, you know, it was just sort of like we were bouncing from like looking at the cows to this and that, and it was okay. It was like, that's fine, you know, let's go do this. And and then he had a really hard time leaving. Like, he just wanted to keep staying.
Yeah.
And so he'd have a little meltdown there. But before it was done, he was learning how to have better emotional regulation and just take a couple deep breaths and be able to get in the car. And then when it came time we did 4 weeks of ground connection, it was time to ride. And he got right on. Got the helmet. His mom was in tears. And once they're on, you know, their focus changes because the horse is a big animal. And so they really, you know, they don't want to fall off and they don't want to get hurt. So they really do, they really do focus a little bit more, but.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I never thought of that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some people, they have to overcome that fear. Like, there is, for some, not all.
I would be afraid.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of heights. The last time I rode a horse, I remember I was pretty young too. I was only like 16 or 17, but I was just like, ooh, I'm too high. I'm terrified.
It can be really scary. And they have to trust us a little bit. So that's what helps build that trust. And we've had a few where they walk up to the mounting block and then I think actually he did that, went to the mounting block the first day and was like, no, I'll do it. Yeah. And we went for a little walk and he decided to. We've had others that it took 2 or 3 times of trying to, which is fine. We don't push them, go to the mounting block. We just go a little bit farther each time. And I don't think we've had any that we haven't been able to work
ultimately
beyond
get
that.
on. Yeah, that is amazing, especially considering autism and routines and just how they want to be comfortable with what they know. And it's so interesting. I'm so surprised. It's amazing that, so I'm really wondering why this isn't more utilized. Maybe
think,
just because of the difficulty, cost and expense of keeping a horse?
Well, and it's becoming more widespread, more well known. It's actually been around. The therapeutic riding industry as an organization has been around since 1969.
Oh, ages.
Yeah. But insurances are just now starting to, decide to start covering services. They will, if they're working with a therapist, so a physical therapist or a mental health therapist, those services can be billed just like their therapy.
Gotcha.
It's finding coverage when maybe a therapist isn't involved and they want the therapeutic riding aspect. There are some insurances that will cover it, but it's still in the beginning stages of that being recognized. So that's where we try to offer scholarships or keep the costs lower than what it really costs. And it just, we just try to make it accessible for whoever and not to turn anyone away based on their ability to pay. So,
well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure God pours it back in all different ways, right?
Yeah.
You don't come up empty.
When you least expect it.
So do you have to have a horse who has a special temperament for this, or could you just go use any horse?
Well, we have 11 horses, and the reason we have to have 11 horses is because this type of a job, even though it's not physically hard for a horse, is emotionally hard for a horse.
Yeah, as it would be for some of us, right? Yeah.
So remember, a horse feels what you feel. So if we're serving a lot of individuals that are stressed, have anxiety, depression, those emotions are transferred to a horse. And so they can only carry so much of that before they need to have some time off. And
how do they show their feelings?
Oh, they can get nippy. They can pin their ears. They can, we had one horse that was never mean, but when she would go to catch him, she would just walk off the other direction. And so
she would say, I'm done.
Yeah. You got to pay attention to those little things that they're telling you, because they are telling you that they need a break. And so we do have to give them a break. And then we're only allowed to do like 3 sessions in a row, and then they have to have an hour at least in between. So we're restricted on that just for the sake of the horse and the longevity. So we do have a variety of different horses. We prefer horses that are very calm on the ground and not really spookable at sudden changes or sudden things, noises. Sometimes kids can be little squealy or wiggly. So horses that are okay with that. But it's also hard to find that perfect horse. And they're really difficult to find and also are expensive when you do find them.
Because that's the horse everybody wants, right?
Exactly.
Of course, yes.
When I describe it to somebody, they say, okay, that's what everybody else tells me. But sometimes you can find the perfect scenario. We have a couple that are owned by someone else in town, but they're just not riding right now, or maybe they grew up, had children riding, but they're in college. So we're able to borrow them. We have one that we use from May to October, and then he goes home for the winter. And we have others that we just keep year round, but at the end of our time, when the horse doesn't want to do it anymore, they do have an owner. And so we cover their expenses while they're with us.
Oh,
and
good
so,
deal then. Yeah.
It's a great, it's kind of a win-win. They get some care and grooming and riding and exercise. And especially for Calvin, who goes home in the winter, he gets to go just be a horse all winter and be with his family, and then he gets excited to come back. And
he needs a little transition here and there.
He does. It's just funny. So those are the perfect situations where we could kind of share that. It helps because if they get to a place where they have to retire and we can't really use them, then we still have the expenses, but we can't really use them. We don't we don't get rid of them. Like, we keep them, unless of course they have an owner that wants them back.
Right.
So we don't, they've worked hard for us and they've deserved this retirement. So we continue to do that. But that's where it is kind of nice if you do have that partnership.
Yeah,
with
I never
owner.
thought about that. Yeah, and then they're happy too. So everybody wins in a situation like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any certain particular kind that's better. But we do use a lot of quarter horses just of their build. It's a little stockier. We have an Arabian as well, and then a miniature. We've had a gypsy vanner last year. We love having them. They're a little stockier, shorter. Most of our horses are pretty tall, so we kind of are looking for one a little bit shorter, around 14 to 15 hands. But sometimes a horse will surprise you, and we have one that's a barrel racer. So if you're running barrels, he's got all kinds of energy. But in the therapeutic industry, he's just calm as can be and loves his job. So we usually like to try them out for a period of time, usually 30 to 60 days. And that's a good indicator of whether they're going to like it or not.
Okay.
Because they don't always like it. The ones that you think might like it are the ones that don't, and vice versa.
You just can't tell. You can't put them in a box, huh?
Nope. So you just got to
interesting. Try them out and see how they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So the ones we have, some are for riding, some we just use for grooming, some we use for other camp programs. And so, yeah.
Oh, I have been out to Solid Grounds and seen the horses, and they are just so lovely. And I think Calvin was probably my favorite of the ones that I met. He seemed kind of sassy.
He's honestly, yes. And he's a lot of people's favorite. But it's funny, for whatever reason, that certain horses just connect.
Draw certain people. Do you have a favorite one?
Well, I thought you might ask that. And I personally sort of feel like that's like trying to have a favorite child.
Yes, I could see that. Yeah, it wouldn't be very nice if you're there all the time.
It depends on the day. I mean, I think there's certain connections. If I'm going to go ride through the field, I like to hop on Opie because he loves the cows and things like that, whereas others don't. But if you're going to hang out and just want love, Smoke or Jesse, like they all have their special little gifts.
Yeah.
And then I have a 3-year-old gelding, and he is very sassy. So we'll see. We're overcoming challenges.
Okay, so he may or may not end up
he's probably going to be super smart and a really good horse. We just have to get over we're in the therapeutic industry. We can't use them until they're at least 5.
I was just going to ask. Okay, almost like a puppy until age 5. They mellow out a little bit at that point.
Get a little more maturity. Okay. Yeah.
I just don't know anything about horses.
No, you're good.
Not really. It's all new to me. Okay, so you just talked about the farming, and I want to ask you about the farming. So you're raising cows at the same time.
Yes.
How many cows do you have?
We have around 55, I think.
Oh my goodness.
55 or 60.
Are they beef cows?
Angus.
Okay.
Angus, yes.
See, I don't know. I'm new to the region, everybody.
You're good.
It's all new to me.
You knew all that, so that's impressive.
Okay, so you were telling me before about the cow birthing and everything. I wanted to hear a crazy farming story. Do you have any crazy farming stories?
Oh, I don't know if I would tell a lot of them, but there is one last year. I think it was last year. We had this big cow. She was due to have a calf, and we had to have the vet come. I think we were going to have him check her to make sure that everything was okay, because she was acting like she was in labor for way too long. And he came, and she had a twisted uterus, so there was no way the baby could have come out. So the solution was we had to, he gave her some sedation, and we literally had to roll her over from side to side. And we couldn't do it on our own, so we had to call the entire crew that worked at Solid Ground. And everybody had a part, like a leg or the rope, and we literally had to roll her over one way and the other way, and the other way. And then he would check her, and he goes, "Oh, probably be like 3 rolls." No, I mean, I think it was 10 or 15. He was almost gonna give up and try something different, more drastic, like a C-section. But we tried it a few more times, and we got it, and they all...
Yeah, everyone cheered, I'm sure.
Everybody cheered. Yeah, they probably will never forget it.
Did anybody take a picture?
I don't think so.
It would be such a good picture, all the staff rolling a cow around.
Yeah. I tell you, it should have its own TV show. There's something every day.
Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah.
Some things... we probably wouldn't talk about.
Yes, I'm sure. I did. I brought you a copy of one of my favorite books, All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot, but I might have left it in my car, so I have to see. I want to give it to you tonight. So if you, listener, have not read All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot, I think that it's a beautiful book. I mean, he also has this great connection with his animals, and just how he describes their personalities and the crazy farmers and the weird things that happen on the farms. It's really a delightful read. And that is probably the total extent of my farming knowledge is from that book.
That's great.
I love your website.
Thank you.
It's really good. In fact, I think I said this to you before. I think it's one of the best websites in Klamath Falls.
Oh, really?
I feel like a lot of websites here are just really dated. There's a business idea. Please, someone go to all these businesses and help their websites out. Okay, but not Klamath Falls. I'm sorry, not Solid Grounds. It's a really good website. And it says that you do date nights.
We do.
Which sounds super exciting.
Yeah, it's very fun. We do we call it EAL. That's deceiving because it's equine assisted learning, but all it really is you work in teams, which is 2 people and a horse. It's fun when there's several couples at the same time. 3 is an ideal number, but the husband and wife are a team with a horse, and there is a set of obstacles. So we choose which one to do for that night, and I'll just give you an example. One of them is blindfolded. So one person is blindfolded and the other person has to verbally guide them through without touching. Right. And so the blindfolded person is steering the horse. So that's where it gets a little tricky.
Oh, that does.
So
do it with a horse.
Yes. So the communication, it can be very funny and fun.
But good way to learn, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you going to have for Valentine's Day something like that?
Well, the hard part about all the fun times like that is we just have an outdoor arena right now.
It's cold.
So it's very weather dependent.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
If the ground stayed good like it is right now, that's great. But if it gets an excessive amount of snow like last week, it was buried in the snow for a few days.
And probably a little slippy after that too, wet and slippy.
Yeah. If it's icy, it's not quite as fun.
So it's more of summertime stuff.
More summertime for those, yeah. And our date nights are a little bit more seasonal since they're not our main therapeutic
Of course, yeah, right. It's more fun. And corporate retreats?
Corporate retreats, we've started doing. Those are super, super fun. I think it's a great way to just really build camaraderie amongst the businesses too, and also team building and leadership development. And so we've been doing a little bit more of those. We've started doing tea parties with Nana's Tea House.
Oh, yes, that's lovely. I have a friend who did one.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah, they come out and do the whole, she sets up the whole table, chandelier, everything. She goes all out. Just super fun. It's fun to see the kids come out. Some are dressed in their little dresses and some are just in their jeans, but they just have a blast.
I am sure. It's something I would never think of, but what a brilliant idea.
So
I like that. Yeah, it sounds like. So there you go, moms.
It's even good for adults.
Of course. Why am I thinking only of little girls? I know. I would like to have a tea party with the horses. Yeah.
Tea party in the barn.
Yeah, it sounds like really good fun. So let's say I'm a foster mom and I have a kid. What would I do to sign up? Would I visit your webpage? Is it all on there, or do I need to go through connections, or what's the pathway?
Everything is on the website, but you can also always send an email. A lot of people will just reach out. It's at info@solidgroundkf.org, and that, sometimes they just want some guidance on what is the best classes. But if you go to the website, click on programs, it shows you what our winter programs are, spring. Just to kind of put a little bit out there, our spring, summer, our spring, fall, and winter is our riding sessions, riding lessons. Those do usually fill up pretty quickly. Our summer camps always fill up. That's a hard one.
I'm sure.
And so we have horse camp and farm camp. And then we have what's called Ground Connection, and that could be for anyone 8 years and up, including adults. And that is just the initial ground bonding time with the horses, learning basic things like putting the halter on, learning how to tack a horse, groom a horse, lead a horse, all of that kind of leads up to riding, and also just gets that connection. So if you want like decreased blood pressure, stress, anxiety, those kind of things, that's a good class. And then
decreased blood pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, see, it just goes on and on. Amazing.
And on.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow.
They actually, one of our veterans, they took his blood pressure prior to a session with the horse, which was incredibly high, and I believe 30 minutes after, and it was back down to within a normal range.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay.
So that was pretty incredible.
There you go.
We also have a barn fund. We're about ready to close that one. That's our winter activity. That is a group activity for children age 4 to 10. And they get to come out. It's lambing season. It's calving season. So they get to hold the baby lambs and the baby calves and learn about goats. And it's all hands-on, but it's also educational. And they all go home with a book at the end. And so that's once a week for 6 weeks. And so
that's coming right up, isn't it?
Coming
but
up.
you said it's almost full.
It starts February 6th. Yep. Registration closes January 31st. Just a couple more spots left on that.
A few more days on that.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you want to, baby lambs are one of the joys of life.
Oh, I know.
I love baby lambs.
Yeah, they're so cute.
Okay, well, we've got 5 minutes. We need to say, how can people donate to this?
So the best way, there is a donate button on our website. I would kind of send everything to the website, but again, it can be people mail donations to the address that's on the website, or the donate button is probably the easiest way.
I'm sure.
Online. You do get an immediate email that gives you the donation receipt as well. So
it's
an easy way.
solidgroundkf.org.
Yes.
And do look at their good webpage. It really is good.
Mm-hmm.
And check out for that donation button. I think I've been to some of your fundraising dinners, and one thing that you always talk about is hay, which I wouldn't have thought of before. How much hay do you need to feed these horses that are changing veterans' lives?
We go through so much hay a year. Bare minimum is usually around 35 ton of hay that we buy.
35 ton of hay a year. And that's not counting water,
right?
Veterinary fees, taxes for the lands. I'm just saying a couple of things.
Spray, grooming brushes.
Right. Here we go.
Rice
Staff.
bran. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So this is a wonderful ministry. Especially love how it was truly birthed of the Lord, that he put it in your heart and he made it happen.
Yep.
So if you've been listening tonight, please prayerfully consider giving a donation to these people who are changing the lives of these struggling children, people with addictions, veterans, people in our community who definitely need to be reached. Check out their webpage, solidgroundkf.org. And also, how can we pray for you?
I think the greatest thing is just always wisdom on the next steps and who to reach, because we don't want to ever get ahead and do things on our own that we think need to happen. I feel like God knows the people in the community, and so just be praying for that for us, for wisdom. And also, we're always needing PATH certified instructors, so
we can pray for that.
the resource, if someone's interested or they've had that background and experience or they want to pursue it, volunteers. Always need volunteers. So.
And everyone can do all of that through your website, right?
Absolutely.
solidgroundkf.org.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Shelley, it's been a real delight to have you on. Thank you so much for giving me your time tonight.
Yeah,
I sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I sure hope someone will be interested and come out and see. It really is an amazing experience. I think I said I'm not the country girl, but I have really loved going out and seeing the farm and seeing as well the miniature horse and the gorgeous little donkeys. It's really, really, really lovely. And and I can imagine how great it would be for the kids as well, because I'm a mom, so I'm always thinking kids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, dear listener. You are listening to KTEC 89.5 FM in Klamath Falls. I'll be on next week. I'm a little up in the air about what my topic is going to be. Either I'm going to talk about hobbies and their very important role in our modern world, and you can pray that maybe I'll get this to happen. I have a friend visiting me from Taiwan, from Taipei, and I would really love to interview him about how he met Jesus and came to salvation. So it's going to be one of those two things. Thank you again so much for listening. I'll be back on next week, Monday night, 8 to 9 p.m. Until then, may our hearts and our minds be, I was going to say solid grounds, be fertile ground. Thanks. Bye.